Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur's Corner with Jeffrey M. Bloom. Get ready to transform your life and business with the legendary speaker, Mr. Les Brown, featuring a dynamic lineup of the most influential leaders in business today, serving as a catalyst for savvy marketers, businesses, and entrepreneurs around the world to easily build the strategies, relationships, and expertise they need to rapidly accelerate business growth. Les Brown's You Gotta Be Hungry 2.0 will bring hundreds of innovative business owners, industry thought leaders, and key influencers together under one roof this fall. Get for tickets 954-604-5333. That's 954-604-5333. Blah blah blah. 954. Sorry, Jeff. 954-604-5333. Got it. www.lesbrownnyc.com. That's www.lesbrownnyc.com. There's a special pricing for listeners to WLINY. Use promo code WLINY/Jeff Bloom when calling and ordering tickets. The Dan Romano Show is the #1 R-rated show on the market today. Tune in every Wednesday from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. right here on WLINY. If you're like most smart, savvy entrepreneurs, you're great at what you do, but you might struggle to feel like you have control over your finances. Debt busting feels like challenges, and wealth building feels like a mystery. Now, Catherine Dean is here to ignite the wealth creator inside of you. Visit wealthtofreedomroadmap.com. That's wealthtofreedomroadmap.com. That's wealthtofreedomroadmap.com, where Catherine Dean will give you free access to her 7 simple steps to eliminate debt, activate savings, and start creating real wealth today. Ignite the wealth creator inside of you. Wealthtofreedomroadmap.com. Or you can call her directly at 914-649-4413. That's 914-649-4413. Complimentary gift, the 7 simple steps to eliminate debt, activate savings, and start creating wealth. Get her at our website, www.wealthtofreedomroadmap.com/access. As a listener to the Entrepreneur's Corner, when you call and mention where you heard this commercial, you receive a 50% discount on the Wealth to Freedom Formula course. Give Catherine a call at 914-649-4413, 914-649-4413. And here's the host of the show, Jeffrey M. Bloom.
Well, welcome back to the new kind of revamped weekly show. So now the show it's still Entrepreneur's Corner, but with 360 degrees of success, and still the same format. Generally, talking to local business owners, people who've been successful and how they got there, and some of their failures. But every once in a while, I like to bring on some human interest stories. And my guest tonight, I've had him on a few times, and it's an important issue that needs to get out there. The only downside of bringing Jeff on is I wish we had more time, because we could talk about this all night. In fact, Eric's going to stay here on the overnight shift, and we're going to, 3 a.m. on this show?
Yeah, Jeff, absolutely, 3 a.m. And Jeff, I'm going to need him to get me out of jail when I kill. Right now,
but Jeff,
because I'm innocent, right? There you
that's
go.
right. Jeff Deskovic is a founder of the Deskovic Foundation. He was wrongfully accused of murder when he was 16 years old, spent 16 years in jail until he finally got out. And just to hear a story is just mind-boggling. He's also featured in the book Anatomy of Innocence, which you see on a table in front of you. And we also have a guest that Jeff brought on of someone who he helped through the organization, Lorenzo Johnson. Welcome, Lorenzo.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Anytime. And again, this is very important. And I told Jeff this many times. I've known Jeff for about 3 years now, 2.5 years, that I did not believe that people would confess to a crime if they didn't do it. That was my mindset until I heard Jeff's story. Even when I first heard his story, I was like, yeah, right. But it's just mind-boggling. Anyway, Lorenzo, do you mind telling the viewers kind of your story and what happened?
Well, I spent 22 years in prison for a crime I never committed, and the first time is sad, but it happened twice. And the first time I spent 16 and a half years in prison before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals vacated my sentence under the grounds of insufficient evidence, which bars a retrial because it's equivalent to a not guilty verdict. So I get out on January 8th.
Real quick, Lorenzo, how old were you when this first happened, and what was the crime?
22, murder, first degree.
Okay, and you were nowhere. Did you know the person?
I was not in the state.
Oh, similar to Jeff. Jeff wasn't even there.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Wow.
Yeah, Lorenzo was, had the misfortune of being a New York resident who was wrongfully convicted in a state other than his own, Pennsylvania.
And how did they they just, for lack of a better way of asking, what, did you pick you at random, or they liked you, or?
What happened was, how can I say this? I was targeted. I was arrested for an unrelated charge that was later dismissed. And being that I wouldn't cooperate and point a random person out for this homicide, a month and a half later, I was the recipient of the homicide.
Wow. And even though you were, like Jeff said, you were in a different state at the time, which should have just knocked it off right after that, and yet it didn't happen. And how long did your trial last for?
2 days. 2.5 days.
And you had a public defender?
Yeah.
And so at that trial, it was guilty of murder. Was it first degree? Was it manslaughter? What was it?
It was first degree. The jury deliberated longer than my trial.
Wow. And what was the sentence, the initial sentence?
Life, natural life. Pennsylvania is called, when you get a life sentence, they title it the other death penalty, because it's natural life. Like, there's no such thing as seeing the parole board. Like, when you leave there with a life sentence, either through the court or through a box.
No. And Jeff, while Lorenzo was in jail, you were both in jail at the same time? Part of that?
Yeah, for a portion of that time, yes. But there reached a point through my own advocacy work, post-exoneration, and starting the Deskovic Foundation, and, being a writer also, because Lorenzo's a writer. So Lorenzo, in the course of him keeping up with wrongful conviction movement and writings and being part of that, he became aware of me. And so we got into contact, writing each other at the tail end of that 16 and a half years. So we corresponded. And as soon as he got the reversal, and he sent me a letter. And so we quickly put together an agreement that I had my interns at the time quickly make photocopies of all the articles on wrongful conviction I had published, and I overnighted it to him so that Lorenzo could distribute it throughout the Pennsylvania prison system before he actually left the prison system to go to the county court, because Lorenzo said that he found my articles to be inspirational to keep going, and that it was having a similar impact. And if he could just get it and distribute it, other prisoners would make copies in the law library, and it would go throughout the Pennsylvania prison system.
Right. So Jeff worked at helping Lorenzo get his initial release.
Well, no, I want to correct that. No,
Okay,
I had
sorry.
nothing to do with him being released the first time.
You picked him up.
Well, when he came home, then we helped him reintegrate, but I'll let Lorenzo tell that
Okay,
part of it.
all right. So Jeff, you and your organization was part of the reintegration process.
Yes.
After he was released.
Yes.
Okay, Lorenzo. So how did you get released the first time? Could you talk us through that process?
When I got released to a bail hearing. And being that I couldn't be retried, the Commonwealth only had one appeal left, and that was to the United States Supreme Court. So I was released on my own recognizance.
Yeah, which is just basically, it's no bail at all. It's on his own promise, on his word. He's going to come back to court.
If necessary.
If necessary. And they only do that, by the way, Jeff, if they think that there's like a less than 1% chance you're going to lose the case. So basically, they're saying it's basically over for all intents and purposes. Normally. So we're going to see what happens here.
Except Lorenzo got lucky.
Normally, and the United States Supreme Court, they might listen to 1% of the criminal cases that come through there a year. And when I say 1%, that's when it's a question of law. They entertain it.
Right.
If it's not a question of law,
Question of fact is different than question
they're
of law.
not even bothered. They're rubber stamped. So,
Right, so you got out based on insufficient evidence, basically.
which is the equivalent verdict.
Okay, so now you're out. And where do you go?
I went back to Yonkers, New York, and like Jeff said, we was in contact at the tail end of my incarceration before I got out. So when I did get out, he had got my number. We connected, and soon we connected, like, he helped me with all type of stuff. Like, it was more than reentry. It was like, when you put two innocent people together, especially with a drive to help others, it's like a fireball that keeps going. So we got a lot accomplished. He took me on speaking engagements with him to show me the ropes of how things go, and met other honorees at the time. And, it was something nice.
Yeah, we went. A few of my favorite moments, Lorenzo. You and I went shopping. Remember, we got different outfits because they released him without anything.
Yeah, you told me those stories. You get, it's like, here you go.
So we went shopping a couple different times as the seasons changed, and I maintained regular contact with Lorenzo, which he found to be stabilizing in an otherwise different world than what he was used to. In fact, I used to see Lorenzo, he made a lot of progress on his own too, and that made me feel good. I mean, he got a part-time, someone helped him with a part-time job, he got his driver's license, and he found a fiance. And right at that point, the foundation found him a full-time job someplace,
Great.
but he never got to start it because the day he was supposed to start it, terrible news came down, and Lorenzo will take it from there.
Okay, so it was 168 days, you said, right?
148.
148, I'm sorry. So, if you can, what was your full-time job going to be?
It
Can
was,
you
it
say?
was
He
at
was
a,
going to be driving a forklift around. He was going to be driving a forklift around a warehouse.
Okay.
And actually, that job didn't exist. So we had actually persuaded the foundation's counsel at the time, a Long Island resident, by the way, Rita Dave, the attorney, who has got a number of exonerations. She convinced the owner of a business to create a job
for him.
for Lorenzo.
Real quick, and this is very important. Jeff, your website, if people want more information?
Yes, www.deskovic.org. That's www.deskovic.org.
DESKOVIC. Right. Okay, Lorenzo, so now it's 148 days later. You're getting ready to start your job, and what happens? The phone rings.
I was at work at the time. I was working for the company I work for now, San Mateo Construction, and I was doing flagging. And I got a call probably between 9 and 10 o'clock. I really couldn't understand because the person on the other side was crying and stuff. Like, the voice was, like, distraught. Then I called on, it was one of my lead counsels, Michael Wiseman. And all I heard out of everything he was saying was the United States Supreme Court reinstated your conviction. So when I heard that, I'm really know something's wrong. Like, I go numb instantly. Like, so once he got himself together, he told me, he said, they reinstated your conviction. They didn't allow us to file briefs or argue our position, which is normal procedures for the United States Supreme Court once they take a hold of a case. And this was all done in one day with a per curiam decision.
And what was the drive behind them doing this, other than it's the obvious we don't want to lose, so we don't want to look bad? I mean, what was their basis? What was the basis of their overturn?
Their basis was all the federal court judges didn't give deference to the jury.
And the other thing I'll point out, I believe that you will agree with me, in the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, they said that, the lower court used the wrong case as the standard for measuring legally insufficient evidence. They never said that there wasn't legally insufficient evidence. They just said that they used the wrong case to measure that. And so in the process of that, they were willing to run over Lorenzo. They didn't care about the human interest. And the really unjust thing about it, is that if Lorenzo had been the one who had lost in the court just below, and he had been appealing that, losing his argument, there's no way in the world that they would have given him permission to appeal, much less ruled in his favor all in one shot, like it was done for the benefit of the government, just to show you the lack of fairness and justice and balance.
So when he called your attorney to tell you this, Lorenzo, that his attorney didn't have a chance to, present anything or nothing? It's just like, you got to be back here?
Well, what happens is that there's a two-step process. The first thing is one of the parties puts in called a petition for certiorari or asking the court to agree to hear the case. And both sides brief but file legal paperwork, but it's only about what the issues would be if the court agrees to hear it. This is the issues we would be arguing about. It's not like an entire elaboration of the argument itself, like you would get to lay out if they agreed to hear it and then said, okay, well, we want briefs from you on these issues of law. They did everything in one shot. That was what was so unfair about it.
So now Jeff gets involved again, but now he's got to drive you back to, is it to court and then prison, or?
No, it's to prison. He called me right away, and I'll let you take it, Lorenzo.
When I got the call, once I got the information, I quickly hung up the phone, to get with my family and things of that nature. But while I was doing that, I was leaving work. When I was leaving work, I was driving from the work site straight to the Deskovich Foundation, straight to the office, the headquarters. So when I get down there, before I get down there, I call and let them know what's going on. So him, Jeff is waiting with Richard Blasberg, Rita DeVay, Millie
Millie
Gutierrez,
Gutierrez, yeah, all people who are working for the foundation.
that knows me, that I have gotten to know since I've been home. They got to know me.
Right.
And when they get the news, they was crushed. So when I came in the office, it was like I just came in, I sat down, and it's like I was dreaming because
Yeah, that just can't be real.
them words is like every Azana worst nightmare to
Right.
hear something like that.
Right.
So it was like a moment of silence. It's that bad because it's like, okay, you were serving a natural life sentence for a crime you didn't commit. You get out of prison from a judicial exoneration from the court, and then 148 days later, they're telling you, nah, you got to come back in here.
They take it all back from you.
We're taking everything back from you, and when the notice of appeal process for the United States Supreme Court, there's no chance of a rehearing for a prisoner in that type of situation. There's no chance. It's unheard of.
So now you're at Jeff's office, at the main office, and what's the time frame for you to where you have to go back?
Oh, it wasn't
Is
no
it
time.
immediate
It
or-
wasn't a time frame. They let me get myself together. It wasn't a time frame at first because the prosecution had to put paperwork in to have the court compel me to return to prison.
Right, and in the meantime, Lorenzo and I put together a really fast plan as to what we could do to try to avoid him going back, which
Right.
obviously it turned out to be in vain, but, we're in a desperate position and you try. So we met with various elected officials here in New York. There happened to be a wrongful conviction press conference in Albany that was scheduled unrelated to this, and so I was one of the people. So Lorenzo and I went up there, and during the Q&A, they got all these cameras, all this Media Innocence Project, and many other exonerees. They got sheriffs, and they got all types of people, broad-based. And so during the Q&A, I called Lorenzo up there in front of all the cameras and look, I want to make my own statement now. They're not supporting this necessarily, but I want to since we're talking about wrongful conviction correction and prevention, I feel like it's appropriate to acknowledge the injustice of this man in the audience with us, Lorenzo Johnson. And so I called him up and he explained to people at the press conference, because the idea here is we're trying to get publicity around what's just happened to try to use that in our conversations with elected officials to try to get them to do something.
Do something right. Yeah.
Yes, and so Lorenzo explained, why is it that in light of what just happened to you, why are you not doing the natural thing? Why are you not going on the run? And you said,
And that was gonna be one of my questions. Yeah, because that'd be popped in my head. I'm gonna get out of Dodge.
It's funny that you said that because what Jeff didn't mention was he had it was a Stop Wrongful Conviction rally now in Albany, New York on May 30th, 2012. That's the day after the United States Supreme Court made their decision to reinstate my conviction. So Jeff talked me into it. He said, listen, we're trying to get publicity and get some motion behind this right here to let everybody see what's going on. And, I think it's a good idea for you to come on out with me to Albany. I can't get you on a bill, but when my turn comes and when you do question and answers, I'm going to reference your case and I'm going to call you up and I want you to come up and explain what took place.
and by the way, I didn't dare, all right? I didn't dare ask permission of any of the people coordinating that because I already know the answer would have been no. But you go all out for your friend, you go all out for almost your client. So take it from there.
So what happened was, after that took place, that was like one of the biggest, because it's two biggest decisions I ever had to make in my life, but that was one of them. And, a lot of things just run through your head. Like, I just finished doing 16 and a half years in prison for a crime I ain't commit. Hell no, I'm not going back. That's that's your first reaction.
Right.
Like, you're crazy if I'm walking voluntary back. But once talking to family and friends and lawyers and, things of that nature, I had built a nice support system of people around me. And these people around me believed in me to a point where they had my back, as far as representation and moral support to combat the injustice I was up against. And that's what a lot of wrongful conviction prisoners that's in prison now, that's what they lack. And I was fortunate to meet these good people, such as Jeff and a couple other people.
So you probably thought that, oh, I'll probably go back, it'll be a week or two, and I'll be out again? I mean, was that part of it?
No. We just
No?
give a reality.
Okay.
You
But
know,
he did think 90 days, though. He did think
we thought it
3
was
or 4
going to be
months.
anywhere from 6 months to a
Yeah.
year. We figured it was 6 months.
But
So
he had a powerhouse
which is a long
team
time.
with him,
Right.
though. But, he had Michael Wiseman, was a federal capital habeas
Yeah, we
unit
had-
was around him. My foundation went from the reintegration. We committed to being involved in the exonerative effort, a little bit of investigation, and a lot of the PR. So he had us as well. Decarcerate Pennsylvania. He had a lot of people around him that he didn't have before, and he had a lot of ideas as to how what the battle plans were as far as investigation. Like all these different people that would be spoken to, we get witness statements. That's the new post-conviction motion, and he's back out.
And it would be common sense, since he was already out, it should be no-brainer.
Right.
Now before.
Except it didn't work out that way.
At all.
Now, before the show started, you mentioned you went back for 5 years.
Yeah.
And you were saying it was worse going back.
Oh, yeah.
But before we talk about his reincarceration, could we just focus for a quick second on that crazy trip back? Because Lorenzo, being a New York resident, being wrongfully convicted in prison in Pennsylvania, he calls me and he asked me to do the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, except for things related to my own wrongful conviction. He says, Jeff, words come down now. I got to turn myself in. It's got to be 2 days from now, and I need you to drive me back. It's either you drive me back or I'm going to be taking buses by myself, and I don't want to do that. Can you please drive me back? And I'm stunned in silence because, as he said, this is every exoneree's nightmare, but now I'm being asked to participate in a way, and then not with just any exoneree, but somebody who we were friends, we were brothers. We still are, and that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But I really would like you to get into a little bit about that crazy, difficult car ride back.
Yeah.
So you called Jeff, and Jeff says, obviously, Jeff, I don't know, but no problem, I'll be right there. And
Yeah, it wasn't too much of no problem. I'll be right there. It was like, when you're making a decision like that to return to prison, you want to make that decision with somebody that has knowledge of the situation, is now fighting against that situation. That's not only a brotherhood that we formed that I said, come on, I need you to, take this ride back with me. It was like, that's more fuel for his fire because he knows, like, one of my brothers came out and they took him back in. So it's like a fuel within you to keep fighting.
Right.
But as far as the ride from New York back to Pennsylvania, it's like going in a warp zone.
Yeah, it's about like a 3-hour drive, 3.5
3.5
hours.
About 3.5 hours.
It's like a warp zone because, like Jeff said, I'm not from Pennsylvania. I have no family down there. So me being in prison in Pennsylvania was like being on a different planet, literally, and it was real difficult, on the way back, soon the decision came down on May 29th, I just got numb. Like, I was there, but I wasn't there. I was numb inside because you try to prepare yourself for what's to come.
Right.
You can't prepare yourself for what's to come when you're dealing with wrongful convictions because it's the worst of the worst.
So you went back to the exact same prison where you were?
Yeah, I went back, but not at first. So the ride back, was emotional distress. It's real stressful.
Can imagine.
And back and forth, your mind is wondering. Everybody's calling you to check on you to see what's going on. You got people calling saying you better not go back to that place. You see what they did to you the first time, and it's sad because I had a friend that was in prison that called me, and he's talking to me. He said, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm on my way back." He said, "I thought you'd be in Mexico by now, And it's reality, but this is what was said. And I said, "Nah." I said, "I'm gonna go meet this head on and take care of this once and for all." But in my situation, it was, I had to be strong for everybody around me. But when I came home, I never got a chance to exhale myself.
Right.
Because everything's happened so fast.
If I can jump in with some of my memories of that trip, I mean, it was a long trip, so we kept rotating drivers, and half the time we couldn't believe what was going on and what we were doing, and the other half the time we were like almost taking turns telling each other every like 15, 20 minutes, right? This wasn't conscious.
Now, was it just the two of you in the car?
Just the two of us in the car. So every 15, 20 minutes, and again, this wasn't planned, it just happened randomly. Like one of us would just say, well, yeah, look, this is unpleasant, but you're going to be back out very soon. This is going to be okay. Like, we kept telling each other that, like, every 15, 20 minutes, you alternate between saying that because you have to hold on to something. You have to have
Absolutely.
hope.
Right.
But then you start to feel hopeless yourself, and now you need the other guy to say it. And so we kept on saying that to each other. And meanwhile, everybody's calling Lorenzo, and you know, most of them don't want him to do. You know, he's got to walk people, explain some things legally to people that have no legal background. And then in the last hour, he focused on making phone calls rather than receiving them. And so, you know, people that were closest to him, you know, he had to call. And then we wound up meeting with Latasha Williams, who will be an attorney after this one more semester, one more class, powerful advocate in Pennsylvania. So she met up with Lorenzo, and we had what was kind of what I called like kind of like a bizarre version of like the Last Supper, right? Except it was lunchtime. We went out and we had the last meal, and we took pictures, and we ate, and we tried to have camaraderie, but this crazy, terrible thing is like looming large. It's all around us. And finally, we drove him to the prison, you know, in the parking lot. I remember I gave him, I don't know, just hundreds of dollars or whatever, just to set up. He had to buy a typewriter, radio, legal supplies, copies, clothes, the whole thing. And I watch him get out of the car and go over to where the COs are waiting for him, and then they put the handcuffs on him, put him inside the building. So I drive off the prison property, and then I got to pull over because my emotions are out of control. And I just feel so helpless in the moment. I couldn't prevent, for all my advocacy, I could not prevent what just happened. And the money I gave him to set up, to try to do the time as good as he could and comfortable as he could, while being also armed to fight the case, you know, making legal copies and other expenses, all of that. It was like $500 or $600, but you know what, Jeff? It seemed such a waste of time. It felt like it was so inadequate. And I just sat there and the river ran on my face for about like 10, 15 minutes. I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it. And as I drove the rest of the way home, you know, like the missing man formation in the planes to go to a military, and I felt that.
And for those listeners out there who don't think this really goes on, I wish I could remember the name of the movie you recommended I watched.
The documentary?
Yeah, what's the name of that documentary?
Documentary is called After Innocence.
After Innocence. You got to see that. It's on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on
It's on Netflix.
Netflix.
That's where I saw it. And if you don't think this stuff goes on,
We made
watch
a
that.
documentary.
Watch
Yeah.
that. And Lorenzo, before you continue, you said you have a website also?
Yeah.
Do you want to share?
Yeah, freelorenzojohnson.org.
Okay.
freelorenzojohnson.org.
And so you're doing something similar to the Deskovic Foundation, or is it a little bit different?
Nah, it's nothing different. Like, I support what Jeff got going on, and that's how I give back through him. You know, we work together as a team as we did before we left. Like, I'm out here now, and, like, we do things in tandems when necessary. Like, you know, he got his everyday life and foundation to run, but when I get an opportunity to come speak about injustice, I'm on the front line.
Great.
So Lorenzo's back in prison.
Right, so now you're back in prison.
Back
and you
in
said
prison,
it
and-
was worse.
Oh.
It was worse than the previous 16 years.
The inmates made fun of you, right?
Yeah,
Didn't they make
yeah,
fun of you?
it's
like, ha-ha,
Yeah, what,
type
what,
thing?
what are you, stupid or something? What the
Yeah.
F are you doing back here?
Why didn't you run? Why didn't
you
I know
run?
it's crazy. It started when I came back inside, you know, the prison, you know. When I was entering the building, this prison that I returned to wasn't the prison that I left. I had to be transported back to that prison. This was just the main prison there that they do all the transportation from.
Okay.
So when I went to the prison, when I got inside, you know, a couple COs was arguing with each other. And, you know, they was looking at me, and I was wondering, like, what's going on? Like, you know, and when I first came, they was like, are you turning yourself in? I said, yeah. I said, come on. You know, turned around, put the handcuffs on, walked inside. And it didn't dawn on me until I looked around and I saw exchanges. They was betting money, was I going to show up or not?
Wow.
The COs inside. So I'm looking at them. But I got so much going in my head. Like, so when I walked inside and the doors closed, it was back to, you know,
Prison,
Lorenzo
right.
Johnson, DF 1036. That was my number.
We have a. I don't mean to interrupt. We have a question. There's somebody out here on there saying that you seem like such a very calm, peaceful man. Were you angry?
I was very disappointed. Like, I got over the anger stage because you can't live with anger and rage because it'll eat at you and it'll kill you physically. You know, when you're dealing with innocence and wrongful conviction, you learn patience, and it's easier said than done because we have no patience to our freedom. Like, it's two things in life you can't get back. That's lost time and life. You know, and it humbles you. Like, you know, a lot of the innocent prisoners that you see exonerated, they be some of the humblest people that you could meet. And what they endure for all these years, like the average innocent prisoner spends
14 years.
between 13 and a half to 15 years in prison. That's if they're lucky to be exonerated.
Yeah.
And most are
Crazy.
not.
That's a lot.
And most are
I
not.
can't.
That's
I
not.
can't imagine 13 days, let alone 13 years.
People are, let me just, Gail says, she says, this man has incredible integrity. If you're not guilty, you don't run. Thank God you have friends. This man's life is going to begin now, she says.
Oh, amen.
So
That's a
thank
really
you.
heartwarming remark
thank
for
you.
Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk
So
about the case from there.
we inside, when, you know, going back, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, I met a lot of people during the years, and, you know, as far as the legal aspect from the law library, other people claiming to be innocent, other people that are innocent. You know, this is a different genre of people. And when I came back, you know, it's some guys that I knew for over a decade that we never spoke again. And, you know, that I was real close with. And there was some guys, you know, that was happy to see me back for a strange reason. I don't know, you know.
I mean, at a friendship or people you've
Yeah,
developed.
yeah. And there's some guys that was crushed when they saw me walk back in because we shared the camaraderie and they saw the fight I went through. So I went into a mental slump probably the first week or two. Like, I went into a mental slump. And when I say I went to a mental slump, it's like when you go back to a cell, when you go back from eating at any restaurant you want, and, you know, waking up and getting meals cooked, when you go back into a cell and then all of a sudden 4 o'clock in the morning, you wake up in the middle of the night and then the front of the door opens and the tray slides in there. You like, you know, you think you're dreaming because you just was
Yeah.
in a free society.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, it threw me off. I didn't eat for like a week or two. Like, I didn't eat literally, like, you know, and I'm fighting with myself back and forth. Like, what the hell is you doing back here? Like, you could have lived better out there. So what? But it's a bigger fight. And my conscience is telling me, don't worry about it. You'll get through it. So I mean, that was the roughest thing I had to go through because it was like tenfold. Like, every second being spent there now is tenfold because not only am I innocent, I just got a taste of my freedom and it was taken back.
Right. Right.
So now everything is more intense now. Like, you know, and the legal team and the foundation, they were scrambling to put something together to get me out. They knew I didn't belong there. So they did everything in their power to get me out. And, you know, it's a process you got to go through. You got to go through the investigation, you know, because when the United States Supreme Court, when they reinstated my conviction, like, that's the last step. There's no other court higher than them.
Right.
So once they make their ruling and send it back downstairs, you know, basically downstairs do what they say.
It's over, basically, unless you
Yeah.
can come with some new evidence or
evidence.
some new legal arguments.
Yeah.
So there was like a twofold track
Yeah.
that was pursued, which was the investigation to turn up new evidence, and then there was some new legal arguments that were able to be made. So while the investigation, which, you know, took many, many years, was going on, Lorenzo lost a couple of
Yeah.
appeals that we thought that
was gonna
he
win.
was going to win. So
By the same court, but, you know, how can I say this? We had put together successive habeas corpus, and for those that, you know, are laypersons to the law, that's like a second appeal to the federal court with arguments that of my innocence.
Right.
But under the procedures, you know, ADBA is real strict how you can file appeals. Like, and if you don't, like Jeff said, if you don't have newly discovered evidence, and not just newly, like newly in the aspect of
So what you presented before, it's not part of the case.
exactly,
Right.
it's timetables with all type of
Oh,
stuff.
that's right. That's the whole thing. Pennsylvania has this bizarre rule.
60 days.
It's a 60-day rule. So it's not enough that you find new evidence of your innocence, but you also have to make sure you bring it to the court within 60 days, or else Or else they're going to argue. The other side's going to argue.
Time barred.
You're time barred. You didn't bring, even if the evidence is something that they previously
Doesn't matter,
withheld.
right?
No. Yeah, we withheld. Maybe we withheld it, but you didn't bring it to the court within 60 days.
Craziness.
That's how crazy it is.
And I remember, and again, not to get off tangent because I want to talk about your case, but same thing happened with Jeff. Jeff was
When I lost my, I lost
was
the federal
appeal
court.
based on, was it 2 days or 3 days?
My petition arrived 4 days late
4
because
days
the court
late.
clerk gave my lawyer the wrong filing information.
Is that
which-
crazy? Is that just unbelievable?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It's just totally away from what's supposed to be the bedrock principle of innocence and and guilt. The innocent go free, the guilty are punished. But they looked at the procedure more than the innocence.
Right.
But continue.
Sorry,
on.
Lorenzo. It's just a similar story. It happens.
We filed the successive 2254, that's a habeas corpus in the federal court, and we tried to go back in front of the same panel that ruled in my favor and released me. Because with this new evidence, we felt what they would see, they'd be overwhelmed this time. Like, we already let them out on insufficient evidence. We didn't know all of this new evidence that I brought forth, which was police corruption, prosecution misconduct, new evidence as far as witnesses that, was intimidated by the police, or, they didn't know I was incarcerated for this case and they could have helped towards my alibi. And they labeled the the federal court shut me down. They said their exact words was I couldn't show prima facie.
Prima facie? Prima facie.
They say I couldn't show prima facie. Now, that's really odd because I'm the same person who just walked out of this courtroom and insufficient evidence and had a solid 2254 successive petition filed. So, this really crushed me because now I got one shot, and that's back in front of the trial court. Now, in federal court, it's hard to get back to federal court when you go downstairs because they give you one habeas corpus, and they tell you to file everything there. So you got to ask for permission. They call it a gateway to get back to federal court.
Right.
And that's where we asked for permission, and we was denied. Not only was we denied asking for the same panel we had before. So, it was instantly shut down. So that was a blow to the legal team and the supporters in itself because they say to themselves, everybody thought that this was the one that's going to get me over the hump.
Yeah, and so, just to jump in for a second, at this time, while these investigations going and he's got these other legal challenges, you fight a wrongful conviction case on many levels. It's not just on the investigative and legal level. So while all this is happening, his case is also being fought, as far as the PR tactics and grassroots and in the court of public opinion. So there was a nice apparatus around Lorenzo. You want to say something?
That's the element that I won't say I say we put together my second time around. Because the first time, don't get me wrong, I'm a writer, and I wrote numerous articles, but I never had rallies and events strictly about my case.
Right.
So what we did was we brainstormed the support. We had different groups that would all come in play. And we would start doing rallies right in front of the prosecutor's office, and Jeff would, the foundation would sponsor the buses to come down.
Yeah, the foundation, we used to rent buses because bringing Lorenzo's family and a lot of his supporters from New York to Pennsylvania, we helped get him news coverage in New York and Pennsylvania just from the name recognition. We connected Lorenzo with the Huffington Post. So now they allowed him to start publishing on there, so he could keep himself in the media through his own pen. He developed the listserv, all those people, the email blasts, and I want to really give a quick recognition to a couple people that deserve credit on the PR side. Lonnie Sori from Sori Communications, who was involved in the Marty Tankliff case. Yeah, he helped get Lorenzo media coverage, and then also I want to give a shout out to Thomas Dichter from Decarcerate Pennsylvania, who took over, managing Lorenzo's website, and he helped him with the articles and sending email blasts out. I mean, it was a total
team effort.
It was a total team. It was a total team.
Yeah, my
effort.
wife that was playing the point position, Taza. She was playing the point position. You had people that was all over. You had Erica Futch. She's in Iowa. You had people that was all different places, but they was all working for the same thing. Right. And we would do these events, and it would bring attention. The news would cover it, and wrongful convictions must be fought inside the courtroom and outside so society could be educated on what's taking place behind these walls.
Yeah, because
and what happens outside the courtroom often is just as important to what's going on in the courtroom. I believe that the judges are more conscious when there's a quote unquote immediate case. They're more careful in their decisions sometimes.
Right.
And they know that this is well. If they're going to do something wrong, it's not going to be done in the dead of night with nobody watching.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of doing all of that.
Now, Jeff, we talked about this early in the show, but when he was first released and everything, the procedure, and they let him go and promised whatever in case he had to come back, wouldn't it have been just easier for them to just forget about it? Let's let this go.
Yeah,
I mean,
well-
wouldn't that have been an easy thing to waste rather than waste taxpayers' dollars on?
No, it would have
proven-
been. It would have been because
I'm trying to
the
make
issues
the other
that
side.
ultimately came out, that is what triggered the last hearing, which ultimately he gets released at. We're going to come to that. But just to get into what that was, the only witness against him Carla Brown, actually turned out to be an alternative suspect.
Oh, there you go.
The motive witness had a quasi-familial relationship with the lead detective's mother, and there were hundreds of pages withheld. So all that stuff, which formed the basis of him getting another hearing, the prosecution, well, specifically the Pennsylvania Attorney, they knew that. They knew that he was innocent, and that ties into the point you're making. They should have just acknowledged and stopped.
Exactly. So now it's an ego thing, I guess, at this point, right?
It becomes an ego thing, not wanting them into the error. They don't want to step on toes. They don't want their colleagues to be scrutinized. And let's not forget, there could be millions. He is entitled to compensation. That's going to be millions of dollars.
Right.
But he'll never see a dime of it if we could just somehow keep this conviction intact.
Yep. Right, which is what we're going to get to as far
Absolutely,
as
yeah.
when he was released.
While we was doing the investigation after we got denied the second go around with federal court, and that left us with one PCRA, Post Conviction Relief Act, appeal in front of the trial court. We went on the legal team went on a rampage, leave no rock unturned. So we came up with little evidence here and there, and it turned into a treasure trove, and it got so bad that after like a second rally we had, or first rally we had, the prosecution was willing to have a sit down with my legal team about my innocent claims that's raised downstairs in this appeal that I have pending in front of the trial judge.
Right.
So this took place, and the prosecution, quote unquote, said we're gonna look into this with good faith, and if he's innocent, we're gonna listen to his claims. For the next 2 years, they prolonged my legal team with filing a reply to my appeal that was pending downstairs. Hundreds of pages of my case discovery, which was supposed to be turned over before my trial so I could have proper defense against what I was up against,
Right.
was never turned over. Like, my case discovery started on page 9, and then it was hundreds of pages missing. So they started chicken feeding my attorney missing pages of discovery for uncontested 90-day continuances to file their reply. And at the same time, they were saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. We trying to look for these witnesses. If you want us to work with you." So this went on for 2 years. But in the process, while this was going on, they turned over evidence. They turned over evidence that their only witness was originally a suspect named a suspect by the police for the same crime. The only witness that made multiple statements. We never had a statement from this witness. We honored the police report, a summary of what this witness was supposed to say. We never had the statement. That's yet to come yet. That's yet to come. So then we find out through investigation that the motive witness was originally one of my alibi witnesses that was with me in New York, was the god sister of the lead detective in this case, who sat at the desk with the prosecution for the whole trial.
Wow.
And as we was going, we found more and more information of Brady information, which is prosecution withholding evidence,
right.
favorable
Brady
evidence
violations.
from the defense. So on the last go-around, we got the blockbuster. We got a 12-page statement they turned over from their only witness, Carla Brown. And in this statement, it contradicts everything that was said from day one. The prosecution let false testimony go uncorrected from my initial arrest, from my initial hearing, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. Every judge in between for 16 and a half years, they let testimony that they knew was false go uncorrected. I was sent back to prison by the United States Supreme Court when they quoted this same testimony from this witness. And they never once said, wait a minute, Your Honor, this is not really accurate here. So when we got this 12-page statement, it was like a blockbuster. It was like, wait a minute, like, we got you now. Like, not only does it corroborate that she was a suspect, because in the statement, she talks to her father, and her father said, well, if they had anything on you, they would have locked you up. You don't know nothing, don't say nothing, keep your mouth closed. Well, who would tell a witness that?
Yeah.
If you don't got nothing to do with nothing.
And to this day, they don't have the real.
No, I'm gonna get to that. So this right here strengthened my appeal and it put me back in the ballpark.
Yeah, then we follow that up with further rallies, 1,000 pages, 1,000 signatures on petition worldwide.
coming.
I went and other people went. We rented bus again. We did we protested outside the Attorney General's office, and we met with one of the representatives to hand them like 1,000 signatures in support of him. She was interviewed once, and we had people tweeting questions at her. Where's the 8 pages? Still more stuff.
right.
So we fought all these levels.
We fought hard and diligently, and how could I say it? They kept prolonging. They kept prolonging. At times, they threatened my defense. Like, literally, like, at times, they threatened my attorneys, well, if you don't back down and calm down, we're just going to say time bar, and you can argue this and let the judge figure this out. Now, this is the same prosecution that gave a promise to do a good faith investigation. It dragged 2 more years out. So when it came time to where the judge said, okay, you file your response, you would think that, okay, they will either respond on my innocence or on guilt. When they filed on Christmas Eve 2013 with a almost 150-page petition strictly on time bar. They didn't answer any of the innocent claims, the guilty claims. They said he should not be awarded a new trial, a hearing, or anything. He filed too late. They blamed me for not finding in their office hidden paperwork that they never turned over to my defense. They blamed me. They held me accountable, saying, well, it's his fault because he could have raised this sooner. Well, how could I raise this sooner if you never turned it over?
It's crazy. So, and I don't want to, because so many more important parts of your story. So now how do you get out? How?
So it went on again since 2013 and went all the way to 2017. So we was going back and forth, and they had a couple side parties that they was entertaining to delay my justice. So it came to a point where the judge, my trial judge, passed away. And
Is that the original trial judge or the?
yeah,
Okay.
He went to hospice care, and they left my case in his chambers, and they assigned everybody else's cases to other judges, but they left my case in his chambers. And he was in hospice care, so somebody's in hospice care, they're fighting for their life, let alone coming back to the courtroom. Them chances are very slim. So we waited another year and a half, and then we petitioned the court for another judge. So we got another judge, and the judge, another year went by with, status conference with both sides, talking about the same thing basically for 2 or 3